when it comes to acquiring clients for a high ticket coaching business or a marketing agency, something that you should always do that's not what everyone thinks, and that thing is nothing, okay? I'll explain. My name's Charlie Morgan, built and scaled a couple of companies, marketing agency, got it to 7 figures and sold it, and a coaching business is at multi 7 figures, currently run it, and I have this YouTube channel to help other people build and scale companies and have more fun. So the best thing to do when it comes to booking appointments is nothing. Now that's a really weird paradox and some weird thing that you might be like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, how could I possibly, if I do nothing, I won't get anything. But what I mean is when it comes to making changes or trying to improve a system, the best thing you can do is nothing at all of the time. It's a weird thing because it sounds like it's some sort of paradox, which it is. Often, if we want to get an answer, we invert what we're looking at. What do I mean? So if you've got like a cold email system and you just started running it, you've been running it for like 3 or 4 days and you've got no appointments, or maybe you just started running ads and yet you have no appointments, or maybe you did sales calls, right? You've been using the same sales script all week, you've done like 4 sales calls and you haven't closed anything. You have to understand that when it comes to systems, there is a principle called latency. Latency is the term we use to describe the time elapsed, the delay. Latency means time delay. It's the delay between an input being put into a system and an output coming out of the system. As human beings, we become very emotional about things that help us establish an identity and move forward in the world. Appointment booking and sales helps you establish an identity and move forward in the world, because if you get those things right, then you get to make more money, you get to have fun, and you get to grow yourself as a human and have everything that you could possibly want and more. Because appointment booking and sales are the things that stand in the way technically of you accomplishing end result, we end up getting very emotional about those things, because obviously, of course you're going to get emotional. If you don't book appointments, you don't make any money, you go out of business, you end up working a 9 to 5, which is what you so commonly hate, right? So latency, input, output, time. If you build a system, you have to give it time to prove itself. All systems require time and latency to work. And it's the most understood concept when it comes to building a system is time. Because everyone's like, oh, I've got the copy and I've got the prospects and I've got the accounts and I've got the software and go, appointments, give me appointments. But you have to wait because everything requires time to work. So what I mean by this is the worst thing that you can do with a client acquisition system, whether it's an appointment system, a YouTube channel, a sales rep, any system that operates in the function of you getting clients, the worst thing you can do is watch it like a hawk. Because if you watch it like a hawk, you're going to become extremely sensitive to all the little micro changes and variations in metrics and things like that. And what you want to do is you want to make decisions in client acquisition on data and averages. And the more data you have, the more representative the average will be of the system. So there's another thing in addition to the latency called regression to the mean. And regression to the mean is a principle in statistics that describes that averages do not establish themselves in small data sets. So if you do 5 sales calls and you don't close any deals, that doesn't mean your script doesn't work. It just means it didn't work for the 5 calls that you did. So let's say that you've built on paper a sales script that could help you get a 30% conversion rate. So you've got a 30% conversion rate script, but you don't know it yet. So you've just modeled it out of the ether and you've put together a script and a process that, if applied to your niche, will close 30% of the calls. If you start doing sales calls, you could go 20 calls with no deals and then 10 calls with deals. So let's say that over 30 calls, that's usually how many calls you want to actually have to measure a script, because it gives you enough data to make a decision about the average. And it's just as likely that you go into the call, you have a block of 30 calls. It's just as likely and probable that you lose 2 calls and then close a call, and then you lose 2 calls and you close a call, and you lose 2 calls and you close a call, and then maybe you lose 5 calls and then you close 2, right? Or something like that. It's like, that's what people think. People think that averages and odds display themselves in a linear fashion. In 1918, in Monte Carlo, there was a casino, and there was a famous event that happened in that casino because on a blackjack table, this casino rolled black 26 times in a row, and gamblers lost millions betting that it would be red next. Because this blackjack table, right, it was like, if you're sitting at a blackjack table, you look at it and if black has just come up 25 times in a row, there's a cognitive bias in psychology where you're going to naturally think, right, it must be red next. But that's irrational, because what's happened in terms of randomness and probability, what happened prior to what's happening now doesn't have any influence on the event. So cause and effect, it usually works in a linear fashion, but when it comes to randomness and probabilities and averages, usually what happened on your last sales call won't affect the next sales call you do in a week, although it's not actually true because it's going to affect you and you'll affect the sales call. But you get the point, right? It's like a blackjack table has a 49.5% chance of rolling red or black, and even if it rolls 26 black balls in a row, doesn't mean the next one is any more likely to be red. And this is an important lesson in systems thinking, and it's an important lesson in client acquisition, because you need to recognize recognize that you should use data and time to make decisions. So if you start sending, I'll give you another example with the sales call example, right? As we establish this, you're just as likely to go lost, close at a 30% conversion rate than you would be if you went 20 calls with no deals and then 10 calls with 10 deals. The average would still be 30%, but the average can represent itself. So I've gone on call losing streaks before when I used to do sales, where I could, if I've got a 30% conversion rate, I've been on calls before where I can lose like 15 calls in a row. And then I pick myself out of that rut and then I suddenly close like 6-7 calls in a row. It's happened before. It's important you recognize that. And the same thing applies to cold email. Fuck me, man. Like, people just are so neurotic and chaotic and unbelievably sensitive to change in the system, and it makes them ruin the whole thing. If you start sending cold emails and you send 100 emails and get no responses, that doesn't mean that the script doesn't work. It just means it hasn't worked for those 100 people. And if you test another 100 or 200, then you might have enough data to start getting an average to know whether or not it actually works. But I see this with people who do cold messaging. They have a list of friends on Facebook and they send like 15 messages, and then nobody replies to the message, and they're just like, oh, all right, I guess it doesn't work. You know, it's like, you can't think like that. You've got to think, how many human beings do I need to expose this stimulus to establish an average that will allow me to extrapolate the average out and find a proof of concept that I can scale? It's really important. The more you change a system, the less it performs. And that's a really important lesson in systems thinking. The more you interfere with it, the less chance it actually has to perform its function and provide results. And all systems produce data, and data can be used to iterate, improve, and grow the system. But a lot of people don't have the rationality or emotional patience or intelligence to sit on their hands and wait. So I'm recording this video to tell you that if your client acquisition system isn't working very well right now, give it time. Relax, slow down. I know you need the money. I know you need the clients, but if you give assent and credence to that need and that emotion that you're experiencing of desperation, and you apply that to your systems, they will perform worse. So ironically, the more you need it, the less you're going to get it. Important lesson. I hope you found this video helpful. Please subscribe. And if you have any other videos you want me to make, do comment below. I read all the comments, and you can like the video if you found it useful. But that's systems: latency, time, data. If you understand those three things and you know what they mean and you actually use them, you're far more likely to build a successful client acquisition system. Have a good day.